The chandelier flickered, casting jagged shadows across the mahogany dining table. Michael sat at the far end, his fork poised over a half-eaten slice of roast, as his father's voice cut through the clink of crystal glasses. "Still pushing savings accounts, Michael." Robert's tone was a blade, sharp and deliberate. 32 years old, a Stanford degree, and you're playing clerk at First Atlantic. Tell me, son, do you ever tire of mediocrity? The room stilled. Linda, Michael's mother, dabbed her lips with a napkin, her eyes fixed on her wine glass. James, the golden son, smirked from across the table, his cufflinks glinting as he leaned back. Sarah, ever the performer, let out a theatrical sigh, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Michael's jaw tightened, but his voice, when it came, was soft, almost too calm. "I like my job, Dad. It's steady, pays the bills." "Bills?" Sarah snorted, tossing her auburn hair. "What, for that shoebox apartment you rent? God, Michael, you're practically a charity case." The words landed like a slap, but Michael's expression didn't waver. He speared a piece of asparagus, chewing slowly, his eyes scanning the table, not with anger, but with something colder, sharper. Watching. Waiting. What makes a family turn on one of their own? Was it Robert's obsession with legacy, forged in the boardrooms of his now-defunct shipping empire? Linda's silent complicity, her fear of rocking the boat? Or James and Sarah, their successes? His law firm partnership, her Miami real estate coup, tainted by the need to diminish their brother to feel tall? Michael knew the answers, had known them for years, but tonight, as the chandelier flickered again, he wondered if they'd ever see him for who he was, or if he even wanted them to. The dinner had been Linda's idea, a family reunion to celebrate James's latest triumph, a high-profile case that had him on the fast track to partner at Kessler & Klein. Sarah, not to be outdone, had flown in from Miami. Her latest deal, a $47 million zero-cents condo development, plastered across the real estate blogs. Michael, summoned from his modest office at First Atlantic Bank, was the odd man out, the underachiever dragged into the spotlight to be dissected. "James," Robert said, raising his glass, "you've made us proud. Kessler's lucky to have you." James inclined his head, all practiced humility. "It's just the beginning, Dad. Next year, I'll have my name on the letterhead." "And Sarah," Robert continued, "that Miami deal? Brilliant. You're rewriting the skyline down there." Sarah beamed, her teeth gleaming. "It's about vision, Daddy. You either have it or you don't." Her eyes flicked to Michael, the implication clear. Michael took a sip of water, the ice clinking softly. Vision. Funny word. He wondered what Sarah would say if she knew he'd bankrolled her precious deal through a shell company, or that James's law firm was propped up by his silent investments. Vision, indeed. "Michael," Linda said suddenly, her voice tentative, as if testing thin ice. "How's the bank? Any promotions on the horizon?" The question was a lifeline, but it came too late. Sarah pounced. "Promotions? Mom, he's a glorified teller. What's he going to be, head of the coin-sorting machine?" James laughed, a low, rumbling sound. "Come on, Sarah, give him some credit. He's probably great at balancing checkbooks." Michael set his glass down, the movement precise. "I manage accounts," he said evenly. "People trust me with their money. It's not glamorous, but it's honest." "Honest?" Robert echoed, his lip curling. "That's what we're calling it? You had every opportunity, Michael. Stanford, top of your class. And you chose this." The word hung in the air, heavy with disdain. Michael's fingers brushed the edge of his phone, tucked in his pocket. A single tap could pull up the numbers. 71% ownership of First Atlantic, 17 other banks, real estate firms stretching from New York to Dubai, and a controlling stake in Kessler & Klein. A billion-dollar empire built in the shadows under the nose of a family too blind to see. Why hide it? The question gnawed at him sometimes. late at night when the city hummed outside his shoebox apartment. Was it pride, proving he could outsmart them all, or something deeper? A test, a way to see if they'd love him without the trappings of success. So far, they'd failed. The conversation shifted to James's case, a corporate merger that had made headlines. Michael listened, his face a mask of polite interest, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd orchestrated that merger, quietly pulling strings through a network of proxies. The CEO of the acquiring company, a friend from Stanford, loyal to Michael's vision. The financing, funneled through one of his offshore accounts. James thought he'd won the case. Michael knew he'd shaped the battlefield. His phone buzzed, a single pulse against his thigh. He ignored it, but it buzzed again, insistent. Across the table, Sarah was mid-story, gesturing animatedly about her Miami penthouse. Michael slipped the phone out, glancing at the screen. A text, no sender ID. They're asking questions. Call now. His pulse quickened, but his face stayed neutral. They? Who? The board at First Atlantic? A rival sniffing around his holdings? Or something worse? Someone digging into the empire he'd buried under layers of anonymity? Michael, Robert snapped. We're talking. Put that thing away. Sorry, Michael said, pocketing the phone. Work? Sarah's laugh was brittle. What, someone needs a new debit card at 9 p.m.? Let's not, Linda murmured, her eyes pleading. No, let's, Sarah said, leaning forward. I'm curious, Michael. What's so important at your little bank job? Enlighten us. Michael met her gaze, and for a moment, the room seemed to shrink, the air charged with something unspoken. He could tell her. Right now, spill it all. The banks, the firms, the billions. Watch her smugness crumble. But where was the fun in that? It's just a client, he said, his voice mild. They trust me. That's enough. Sarah rolled her eyes, but James tilted his head, studying him. Trust, he said slowly. Funny thing, trust. You've got to earn it. Takes work. Strategy. Michael's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile. You'd know all about strategy, James. The words were innocuous, but something in his tone made James pause, his smirk faltering. For a split second, Michael wondered if his brother suspected. If he'd noticed the patterns, the deals that fell into place too neatly, the clients who deferred to Michael's advice with uncanny respect. The phone buzzed again. Michael's hand twitched, but he kept it still. Not here, not now. Dessert arrived, a chocolate torte that Linda fussed over, trying to lighten the mood. Robert launched into a lecture about legacy, his voice booming as he recounted his own triumphs. Michael tuned him out, his mind on the text. They're asking questions. He'd built his empire with surgical precision, every move cloaked in shell companies and proxies. But no fortress was impregnable. Someone, somewhere, was getting close. He excused himself, murmuring about the bathroom, and slipped into the hallway. The house was a museum of his father's ego. Marble floors, gilt-framed portraits, a grandfather clock ticking like a heartbeat. Michael pulled out his phone and dialed the number. It answered on the first ring. Talk? He said, his voice low. Sir, came the reply, clipped and urgent. It's the Cayman accounts. Someone's tracing the transfers. They've got a name, your name. Michael's grip tightened. We don't know yet. Could be internal. Could be her. The word hit like a punch. He didn't need a name to know who they meant. The one person who'd come closest to unraveling his web years ago. The one he'd outsmarted. Or thought he had. Lock it down, he said. I want updates by morning. He hung up, his heart steady but his mind racing. Back at the table, Sarah's laughter rang out, sharp and mocking. Michael paused, staring at the chandelier's reflection in the polished floor. He could walk away, leave them to their petty judgments. But where was the challenge in that? He returned to the dining room, sliding into his seat. Robert was mid-rant, something about discipline. Sarah caught Michael's eye and grinned, predatory. Back so soon? What, no urgent bank emergencies? Michael smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Not yet, he said, but the night's young. As the chandelier flickered again, casting its fractured light across the table, Michael's phone buzzed one last time. He didn't check it. He didn't need to. The game was on, and this time, he'd play it to the end. The science fair ribbon was blue, first place, pinned to Michael's chest like a medal of honor. He was 12, all gangly limbs and eager eyes, clutching a model rocket he'd spent months perfecting. The gymnasium buzzed with proud parents, but Robert's voice, low and cutting, sliced through the noise. Second place in debate, James. That's the real prize. Clients don't care about toys. Michael's smile faltered, the ribbon suddenly heavy. He'd won, hadn't he? But in the Sterling household, winning was never enough. Not unless it was the right kind of win. 20 years later, Michael sat at his desk in First Atlantic Bank, the memory as sharp as ever. The office was modest, a corner cubicle with a flickering fluorescent light and a view of the parking lot. His nameplate read, Michael Sterling, Personal Banking Advisor, a title that made his family sneer, but the desk hid secrets. A locked drawer with a burner phone, an encrypted laptop that tracked his empire. 71% of First Atlantic, 17 banks, real estate firms, and a controlling stake in James's law firm, a billion-dollar web spun in the shadows. Why hide it? The question lingered, as it had at the family dinner 2 weeks ago, when Sarah's laughter and Robert's disdain had filled the dining room. Michael leaned back, his chair creaking, and stared at the loan application on his screen. Sterling Manufacturing, applicant Robert Sterling. His father's business, once a titan of industry, now a sinking ship begging for a $10 million 0 cents lifeline. And Michael, the glorified teller, held the power to save it. Or let it drown. The bank's loan committee buzzed with skepticism. Michael sat at the conference table, his expression neutral, as Kieran Voss, the head of commercial lending, tapped her pen against the file. Sterling Manufacturing's numbers are a mess, she said. Over-leveraged, outdated equipment, and Robert Sterling's too stubborn to pivot. This is a charity case, not a loan. Robert's got a reputation, added Tom Noon, a junior analyst. Big name, big ego, but his cash flow's been bleeding for years. Michael's fingers brushed the edge of his phone, the same one that had buzzed with warnings at the dinner. They're asking questions. The memory tightened his chest, but he kept his voice steady. What about collateral? Sterling's got assets, real estate, patents. Karen snorted. Assets? Half their properties are mortgaged to the hilt. And those patents? Obsolete. Michael, you're too soft on this. Stick to personal accounts. The room chuckled, the sound grating. Michael smiled thinly, his mind racing. He could approve the loan with a single email routed through his network of proxies. But should he? Robert, who'd called him mediocre, who'd dismissed his rocket and his dreams, did he deserve salvation? Or was this Michael's chance to rewrite the rules, to force his father to see him? His phone vibrated, a single pulse. He glanced at it under the table. She's digging again. Cayman accounts. Be careful. Her. The shadow from his past. The one who'd nearly cracked his empire 5 years ago. A Stanford classmate, brilliant and ruthless, who'd vanished after their clash. Or so he'd thought. Michael's grip tightened. If she was back, the loan was the least of his problems. The bank's lobby was quiet that afternoon, the marble floors gleaming under skylights. Michael was reviewing a client's portfolio when Sarah stormed in, her heels clicking like gunfire. She wore a tailored blazer, her Miami tan glowing, but her eyes were sharp, predatory. Michael, she said, leaning over his desk. We need to talk. He didn't look up. I'm working, Sarah. Make an appointment. She laughed, brittle and cold. An appointment. With my little brother, the bank drone, please. I'm here about Dad's loan. You're pushing it through, right? Michael's pen paused. It's not my call. The committee decides. Bullshit. Sarah's voice dropped, conspiratorial. You've got pull here, Michael. I know you. Always playing the quiet card. But you're not that powerless. Dad needs this. And you owe him. Owe him? Michael met her gaze, his tone dangerously soft. For what, Sarah? The years of, you're not enough? Or the dinner where you called me a charity case? Her smirk faltered, but she recovered fast. Don't get sensitive. This is business. Sterling Manufacturing's a legacy. You'd let it die to prove a point? Michael leaned back, studying her. Sarah, the deal closer, the family's shining star. Did she know he'd bankrolled her Miami project, funneling funds through a shell company? Or that her penthouse was leased from one of his firms? He could tell her, watch her confidence crack, but not yet. I'll do my job, he said. That's all. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You're hiding something, Michael. Always have. But fine, play your game, just don't screw this up. As she turned to leave, a teller approached, a young man named Ethan, his posture deferential. Mr. Sterling, sir, the chairman called. He needs your input on the special accounts. Michael's pulse spiked, but his face stayed calm. Tell him I'm tied up. I'll call later. Ethan nodded and retreated, but Sarah paused, her head tilting. Special accounts? Since when do you handle anything special? Michael shrugged. Just bank jargon. You wouldn't understand. Her gaze lingered, suspicious, but she left without another word. Michael exhaled, his mind on Ethan's slip. The chairman, his proxy, one of many, never called publicly. Something was wrong. The board meeting was set for Friday, a sleek conference room at First Atlantic's headquarters. Michael arrived early, his suit unremarkable, his demeanor unassuming. The board members, a mix of gray-hailed executives and sharp-eyed investors, nodded as he entered. They knew him as the bank's silent power, the one who'd turned First Atlantic into a titan. But to his family, invited as stakeholders in Sterling Manufacturing's loan, he was still the failure. Robert sat at the table's head, his posture rigid, Linda beside him, her hands clasped tightly. James, in a tailored suit, scrolled through his phone, while Sarah whispered to a board member, all charm and calculation. Michael took a seat at the far end, ignored, his burner phone heavy in his pocket. The meeting began with Karen presenting the loan application, her tone blunt. Sterling Manufacturing's a risk. We recommend denial. Robert's face reddened. Denial? This bank owes me. I built half this city's industry. Times change, Mr. Sterling, Karen said. Your numbers don't add up. James leaned forward, his voice smooth. Let's not rush. There's precedent for high-risk loans with strong collateral. I can cite cases. Cases won't fix cash flow, Karen cut in. The room tensed, arguments flaring. Michael listened, his silence a shield. Then his phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She's here, boardroom, now. His blood ran cold. Here? Impossible. He scanned the room, but no one stood out. Until he noticed a board member, a woman in her 40s, her eyes locked on him. Not her, not the one he feared, but a proxy? A spy? He stood, his voice cutting through the noise. Enough. All eyes turned to him, surprised. Robert scoffed. Sit down, Michael. This isn't your stage. But Michael didn't sit. He walked to the front, his steps measured, and faced the room. You're all missing the point. This isn't about Sterling Manufacturing. It's about control. Sarah laughed, sharp and mocking. Control? You? Michael? Stick to your checkbooks. He ignored her, his gaze sweeping the board. First Atlantic isn't just a bank. It's mine. 71% ownership, acquired over a decade. 17 other banks, real estate firms, and... He paused, locking eyes with James. Kessler and Klein. I own it all. The room froze. Robert's mouth opened, then closed. Linda's hands trembled. James's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the table. Sarah's face drained of color, her voice a hiss. You're lying. Am I? Michael pulled a tablet from his briefcase, displaying a portfolio, his portfolio, billions in assets, shell companies, proxies. Your Miami deal, Sarah. My funding. Your law firm, James. My investment. Sterling Manufacturing's patents. I bought them years ago. Robert stood, his voice shaking. This is impossible. You were a nobody who outplayed you all, Michael said, his tone ice. I built this to escape your shadow dad, your expectations, your comparisons, and I won. The woman in the corner, the one he'd noticed, smiled faintly, her eyes gleaming. Michael's stomach twisted. She wasn't just a board member. She was a message. Linda's voice broke the silence, soft and pleading. Michael, why didn't you tell us? He looked at her, the only one who'd ever tried to understand. Because I needed to know who you'd love without the money. Turns out, none of you. Sarah lunged forward, her voice venomous. You manipulative bastard. You let us think you were nothing. And you proved me right, Michael said, unflinching. James stood, his face unreadable. You played us, all of us. But why now? Why reveal it? Michael hesitated. The text burned in his mind. She's here. Because someone's closing in. Someone who knows too much. The boardroom door opened, and Ethan rushed in, his face pale. Mr. Sterling, it's urgent. The Cayman accounts. They're frozen. And there's a document. Your name's on it. And hers. Michael's heart stopped. Hers. A name he hadn't spoken in years, scrawled on a bank record he'd buried. A name tied to his family, to his past, to the one person who could destroy him. He turned to the board, to his family. Their faces a mix of shock and betrayal. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The glow of Michael's laptop cast harsh shadows across his apartment. A modest one-bedroom that Sarah had mocked as a shoebox. It was past midnight, the city's Hume muted beyond the window. On the screen, financial records glowed. James' gambling debts, a $2,300,000 0 cents hole tied to Kessler and Klein, the law firm Michael owned. Sarah's Miami deal, a $47 million 0 cents collapse after First Atlantic, under his orders, pulled funding. He leaned back, the leather chair creaking, and rubbed his temples. Knowledge was power, but it was also a cage. He closed his eyes, and a memory surfaced, unbidden. He was 10, hiding behind the staircase as Robert's voice thundered, James, you let that kid cheat you in chess? You're Sterling. Act like it. James 13 stood rigid, but later, when Robert was gone, he'd slipped Michael a candy bar, whispering, Don't let Dad get to you, Mikey. That James was gone, buried under ambition and debts, but the memory lingered, a thorn in Michael's resolve. Could he use his brother's secrets against him? Should he? The burner phone on his desk buzzed, snapping him back. A text, no sender ID. She knows about James. Check the ledger. Michael's pulse quickened. Her. The shadow from his past, the one who'd nearly exposed his empire. He opened the encrypted ledger, scanning transactions. There, a withdrawal, $50,000 0 cents flagged with a name, E. Caldwell. His breath caught. Evelyn Caldwell, his Stanford classmate, the one who'd vanished after their... Or had she? The conference room at First Atlantic Bank was sterile, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the family dining room where Michael had last faced his family's scorn. 2 weeks had passed since the boardroom revelation. Since he'd laid bare his empire, 71% of First Atlantic, 17 banks, real estate firms, and Kessler and Klein. The fallout lingered. Robert's stunned silence, Sarah's fury, James's unreadable stare. Now they sat across from him, summoned to discuss Sterling Manufacturing's fate. Michael stood at the head of the table, a projector displaying his restructuring plan. Sterling Manufacturing can survive, he said, his voice steady, but it needs surgery, new management, lean operations, and a $10 million 0-cents loan. There's a catch. You relinquish control to a board I appoint. Robert's face reddened, his fists clenching. Relinquish control? This is my company, Michael, my legacy. It's a sinking ship, Michael said, unflinching. Your debt's at $15 million, 0 cents. Your factories are outdated, and your clients are jumping to competitors. My plan saves it. Your pride won't. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes blazing. You sabotaged us. That Miami deal? I know you tanked it. And now you're holding Dad's business hostage? You're disgusting. Michael met her gaze, his tone cold. I pulled funding because your deal was a house of cards, over-leveraged, no contingency. You'd have lost everything. I saved you. Saved me? Sarah's laugh was brittle. You let me think I failed. You did fail, Michael said, but you can learn. Or you can keep blaming me. James, silent until now, cleared his throat. And me? What's your angle, Michael? You own my firm. You've known about... He hesitated, glancing at the others. My mistakes. The room stilled. Michael's mind flashed to the ledger. James's debts, a secret that could ruin him. I know, he said softly. But I'm not here to bury you, James. I'm offering a way out for all of you. Linda, seated beside Robert, spoke, her voice trembling. Michael, why are you doing this? You don't need us. You never did. He looked at her, the only one who'd ever seen glimpses of his heart. Because you're still family, he said, flawed, stubborn, but mine. Robert stood, his voice hoarse. You think you're better than us. You hid your billions, let us think you were nothing, and now you demand control? I hid it because you never saw me, Michael said, his voice cracking for the first time. You wanted James the lawyer, Sarah the deal-maker. I was the spare, the failure. So I built something you couldn't touch. But I'm not here to gloat. I'm here to save what's left. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling. Robert sat, his shoulders sagging. Sarah's eyes glistened, but she looked away. James stared at the table, his jaw tight. Linda reached for Michael's hand, but he pulled back, the gesture too raw. Weeks passed, and the family began to shift, like tectonic plates grinding into new positions. James accepted a transfer to Kessler and Klein's Chicago office, a demotion disguised as a fresh start. Michael had cleared his debts, routing funds through proxies, but the gesture wasn't charity. It was a leash. Don't screw this up, Michael had told him, handing over the plane ticket. James had nodded, his eyes conflicted. I owe you, he'd said, but the words carried a shadow of resentment. Sarah threw herself into smaller real estate projects, shunning the flashy deals that had defined her. Michael advised her, his suggestions sharp but practical. Diversify tenants, prioritize cash flow. She listened, grudgingly, her pride warring with necessity. One evening, at a coffee shop, she'd muttered, You're not as smart as you think. Michael had smiled, smart enough to keep you solvent. Robert signed the restructuring agreement, ceding control to Michael's board. The act was a wound, his signature trembling on the page. You've taken everything, he'd said, but Michael shook his head. I'm giving you a chance to rebuild. Take it. Linda's change was quieter, deeper. She visited Michael's apartment, bringing a photo album from his childhood, pictures of his rocket, his graduation, moments she'd cherished but never voiced. "I should have fought for you," she said, tears in her eyes. "I see you now, Michael. I always did, in my heart." He hugged her, but the warmth was tempered by years of silence. The burner phone buzzed again, late one night, as Michael reviewed First Atlantic's quarterly report. A letter had arrived at the bank, addressed to Mikey, a nickname only one person had ever used. He tore it open, his hands steady but his heart racing. Inside, a single line in elegant script: "You can't hide forever. Ask Linda about 1995. The year Sterling Manufacturing nearly collapsed, saved by a mysterious investor. The year Evelyn Caldwell had interned at Robert's company, a summer Michael had spent trailing her, awestruck by her brilliance. Had Linda known her? Had she known Evelyn's grudge, her vow to dismantle the Sterlings after Robert betrayed her? Michael stared at the letter, the pieces clicking into place. Evelyn wasn't just a rival. She was personal, tied to his family's past, to secrets even he didn't know. And now she was leaking James's debts, freezing accounts, circling closer. He dialed his proxy at the bank. "Find her," he said. "Now." The next morning, a courier delivered a document to his desk, unearthed from Sterling Manufacturing's archives. A contract, signed by Robert and Evelyn Caldwell, with a clause circled in red. In event of default, all assets transfer to EC. Michael's blood ran cold. Evelyn wasn't just threatening his empire, she was claiming it. And the key to stopping her lay in a truth his family had buried, a truth that could shatter their fragile new bond. The apartment was silent, save for the faint hum of the city beyond the window. Michael sat at his desk, the burner phone dormant, its secrets no longer a shield. The laptop screen glowed, displaying his empire's latest figures. $1,700,000,000, 0 cents in assets, a web of banks, real estate, and law firms. Numbers that had once defined him. Now they felt like chains. A letter lay open beside him, Linda's handwriting soft and looping. "I found this in the attic. You were always my dreamer, Michael." Tucked inside was a drawing, creased and faded, his childhood rocket, sketched in crayon, a 12-year-old's vision of the stars. He traced the lines, the memory flooding back. Robert's dismissal, James's candy bar, the weight of a family that loved him but never saw him. Success, he'd thought, was proving them wrong, building an empire they couldn't touch. But as he stared at the drawing, he wondered, what had he lost in the shadows? Evelyn's letter still haunted him, its cryptic warning, "Ask Linda about 1995, a splinter in his mind. She was out there, circling, her vendetta rooted in a betrayal he was only beginning to understand. But tonight, Michael didn't want revenge. He wanted truth. Not the kind that toppled empires, but the kind that set him free. The meeting with Evelyn was arranged discreetly in a nondescript cafe on the city's edge. Michael arrived early, his suit plain, his demeanor calm. She entered minutes later, her presence commanding despite the years. Evelyn Caldwell, once his Stanford rival, now his shadow. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, met his as she sat. "You've been busy, Mikey," she said, her voice laced with mockery. "Billion-dollar empires, secret stakes, but you can't hide from 1995. Michael leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Tell me about it." Robert's betrayal, the contract. Her smile faltered, replaced by something raw. "Your father promised me a stake in Sterling Manufacturing. I was 22, brilliant, naive. When I delivered, he cut me out, said I was just an intern. I lost everything." Michael nodded, the pieces clicking. The mysterious investor who'd saved Robert's company, Evelyn's work, stolen. So you came for me, he said, because I'm his son. I came for justice, she snapped. Your empire's built on his lies. I could have exposed you. James's debts, Sarah's failure, but I wanted you to feel it, the betrayal. He studied her, seeing not just the enemy but the wound. I'm not my father, he said. I'll settle with you. Full restitution for 1995, plus interest. But this ends now. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Why? You could crush me. Because I'm done with games, Michael said, his voice steady. I don't want your pain. I want my life back. She agreed, signing the settlement, but as she left, she paused. You're not free yet, Michael. Others are watching. Stamford wasn't just us. The words lingered, a warning he couldn't shake, but for now he'd closed one door. It was time to open another. The park was quiet, the late afternoon sun filtering through oak trees. Michael had chosen it for the family meeting, not the dining room with its flickering chandelier, but a place where they could speak as equals. They arrived one by one. Robert, his shoulders stooped, Linda clutching a scarf, James fresh from Chicago, his eyes wary. Sarah, her posture defiant but softer than before. Michael stood, the drawing in his pocket, and faced them. I've spent my life chasing success, he said, his voice clear. Wealth, power, control. I thought it would make you see me, but I was wrong. Robert shifted, his jaw tight. You proved your point, Michael. You're better than us. What now? No, Michael said, shaking his head. I'm not better. I hid who I was, lied to you all. Success isn't this, he gestured vaguely, as if to his empire. It's the work we do with integrity, the people we hold close, flaws and all. Sarah scoffed, but her voice wavered. Easy for you to say, you're a billionaire. Am I? Michael met her gaze. I'm stepping back. First Atlantic, the banks, the firms, they'll run without me. I'm redirecting profits to community programs, schools, places that matter. I don't need billions to be whole. James spoke, his voice low. Why help us then? My debts, Sarah's projects, Dad's company. You could have let us fail. Michael looked at him, seeing the brother who'd once shielded him. Because you're my family. I don't want your gratitude. I want you to be better. Like I'm trying to be. Linda's eyes glistened. I see you now, Michael. I always did, but I was too afraid to say it. Robert cleared his throat, his voice rough. I misjudged you, but I'm not good at apologies. You've taken my company, my pride. What's left? Yourself, Michael said softly. Build something new, Dad. Not for legacy, but for you. Sarah crossed her arms, her voice sharp but curious. And me? You think I'll just follow your lead? No, Michael said, a faint smile breaking through. You'll fight me, Sarah, but you'll build something real. I believe in you. The park grew still, the weight of their words settling. It wasn't perfect. Robert's pride lingered, Sarah's ambition simmered, James's guilt shadowed his gratitude. But it was a start, a family, fractured but reaching for something true. That night, Michael stood on his apartment's balcony, the city sprawling below. In his hand was the drawing, its crayon lines a map of who he'd been. He lit a match, the flame catching the paper's edge. As it burned, he felt the weight lift. Not fully, but enough. The empire, the secrets, the need to prove himself. They were ashes now. What remained was his work, his integrity, his family's imperfect love. He turned to go inside, but paused. On the table, a news alert glowed on his phone. New financial titan emerges, acquiring Caldwell assets. The name beneath it stopped him cold. Daniel Voss, his Stanford classmate, Evelyn's old ally. a man who'd once sworn to outdo them both. Michael smiled, not with fear, but with resolve. The game wasn't over, but he was ready, not as a billionaire, but as a man who knew what mattered.